I walked in.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, and they also punch things just for fun. All right, can I get a motion to reconvene into open session?
I move that we reconvene into open session.
I'll second that.
Great. Roll call vote. Rochelle?
Aye.
Philip?
Aye.
Eric? Janice?
Aye.
Susan? Stephanie? Elizabeth? Aye. Ayes have it. We are now in open. All right, next up on the agenda is the consent agenda. Can I get a motion, please?
I motion to approve the consent agenda as provided.
Second.
Discussion? Voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. Next up, Celebration of Excellence. We have the Silent Olympiad teams here to present. So come on up, friends. We're excited. Welcome.
Does this work? Okay, it does. Hello, we are from MG Science Olympiad. This year, our last season, we had one high school team and two middle school teams. Science Olympiad is a club where the students prep for anywhere between 3 and 6 events in a competition. We normally go to 2 competitions a year, regionals and state, and we normally are able to cover 25 of the 30 events that are offered. There are 3 types of events that people can compete in. Core knowledge events, which are pretty much tests that you study for and then go take in a time period. And then lab events, they give you materials and you conduct the experiment to meet the criteria. And then build events, which you would build a something that would work for the event and go fine tune it and use it in the competition. Do you guys want to talk about your build events at all? Go for it.
So I did one build event. I did tower. You build a tower and then see how much it can weigh. You try to make it weigh the most for more points. It went okay. It's a hard event to compete in. And then I also did a mixed event, wind power, where you build a wind device and see how much power it can generate. And then you also take a test.
Impressive.
I did 2 build events, tower, it's a hard one, and then electric vehicle. So we built this car. It has to be battery powered and it has to be able to stop on its own. So we used a braking system back here that basically when the wing nut here hits all the way over, it stops. We did pretty well. We medaled in regionals and we got 6th place in state. So
What is the criteria for, what's the judging criteria for that? I understand build makes sense to me, but how
So-
far it goes or?
They give us a target that's a certain distance away from the start point.
Okay.
And so basically we have to fine tune it to each target. So we do a logbook before, and then we have to use our measurements to do the rotations of the wheels to get it to stop at the right point.
Got it, okay.
And then
Can't do anything, so I'm really impressed with all of this.
Also, I'm loving the flag.
Yeah, a little MG sale. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt your presentation. I was just curious what the scoring criteria was.
So for the high school, we did pretty well in air trajectory. We did 3rd place, I think, in state. We took 6th place in electric vehicle and horticulture won at regionals. Go for it.
We have, oh, sorry.
Oh, you're good.
It's really loud.
Yeah.
We have 2 teams at GES, and we meet every other Thursday. We go to regionals every year, and although it is not guaranteed, we have managed to get both of our teams to state in Division B. We've also grown enough to have a team at the high school that competes in Division C. Division C has some of the best teams in all of Wisconsin, so it is amazing how well they did.
You're good, just ignore her. Yeah, just don't pay attention. Pay no attention to the woman in the corner.
Next slide.
At competition, we get there. Usually we have to wake up 4
It is so early.
Like super,
we have
like,
to be at the school by 4:30.
And then we ride a bus. This year state was far. It was in Menominee, so we had to get up really early and get there. And then once you're there, you go to all your events and you roam around the campus the whole day. And then at the end, there's a ceremony before we go home. Yeah.
Yes.
Lot of
wow. So what are they all for?
So Codebusters is one of my events that I'm good at. So I got third place in state and regionals. And then in regionals, I got third in air trajectory. And then at state, I got third in experimental design.
Find if passing just one of those rounds.
Can you explain what Codebusters is?
Codebusters, we get a series of codes that we have to learn how to solve and break. And then at competition, you get the codes and you have a time limit to try to see how many you can break with your team of 3.
It's probably the agreed upon hardest event.
Sounds really
Yeah,
fun
sounds
though.
super difficult.
So here's my question: do they have Science Olympiad for grown-ups? Because I really want to go and do it now.
No, but I'm sure they could use a coach.
Add to the repertoire. I don't know that you want me in your. Very cool. So is it worth it getting up that early? That's early. That's commitment.
I mean, you don't really realize it when you're with all other people you've been practicing with. So
Yeah.
You just have enough energy to run through the whole day. And then we normally don't get back until around 10 or 11.
Okay.
But we stop at Culver's on the way back normally. So
Perfect.
that's fun.
Yeah. That's the incentive to get through the day.
Yeah. You get to wander around a cool campus. So that's also really, really fun.
Do you know about how many schools are there competing?
Division C was over 30, Division B was high 20s.
Okay.
They divided it this year into big schools and small schools based on attendance.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. Questions or comments from board?
Is this your first year doing this for any of you, or have you been doing this for years?
I've done it for 2 years since I was in 6th grade. I'm in 7th grade now.
Same.
I've also done it for 2 years, but there are some people who have done it. This is their 4th year.
Yeah.
When you do it multiple years, do you repeat events? So do you?
Yeah, they do a good job rotating the events, but I'll probably compete in an electric vehicle again next year.
You have ideas already? Are you already cooking up your strategy for next year?
We landed 2.5 centimeters from the target, so I feel like that was one of our best runs ever. But yeah, there's always ways you can improve it.
Other questions or comments?
So, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, Lena.
Are you two in middle school going to do Science Olympiad in high school then?
Yeah, probably.
Everyone will be scared of you with all your experience.
We're gonna have a big team in 2 years.
How big is your team at the high school right now?
15.
What about at the middle school?
Big enough
big,
for two
right?
teams, right?
We had 22 competing, but state happened at an awkward time with spring break, so we couldn't do everybody.
Dennis.
I was just going to say, do you have a favorite event?
Roller coaster.
Oh, tell me more.
I wasn't able to do it this year, but it's a build event where you make a roller coaster for a marble, and then when you bring it in, they tell you the target time that you're supposed to have the marble roll for, and you're trying to get within 5 seconds, more or less, than what they told you.
Oh, yours is coding. What is your favorite event?
What events did I do? I think electric vehicle. Just, it's a fun one. You get to build it, and then, yeah, we get help from teammates, and it's just a lot of fun because you get to be with your friends, and then you get experience and stuff like this. Before, I did not know how to wire a battery pack to motors.
That's cool.
How many people are in your team then?
There's 15 on the high school team, but we only had 14 at each because 2 different people couldn't make it to each one.
So you can all 14 of you work together on the event, or?
I mean,
Okay.
technically you could, but only 2 to 3 people can compete.
Okay. Cool. Thanks.
Can you guys introduce yourselves?
I'm Gavin Miller.
I'm Emily Byer.
Tristan Johnson.
You want to introduce your coaches that are here with you tonight?
Mr. McLaughlin and Mrs. Witt.
Thank you for all that you do.
Yeah, this was really amazing. Thank you for coming and sharing your talents with us. I can't wait to hear about how it goes next year.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
All right, moving on to the student board report. Lena.
All right. Hello, everyone.
Hi, Lena.
So, some of you may know since you were there last night, but choir, band, and orchestra students, they had their last concerts of the year, all in this month. And orchestra was last night, so that's why I mentioned that. And so these concerts, they generally had slightly longer programs, and they recognized the seniors in their group, as well as students who had competed at Solon Ensemble this year. Choir students this year got to dress up in various themes, Mamma Mia being a really fun one, and also wearing their prom dresses again. And the orchestra program had its very last concert conducted by Mr. Davik. So we're very proud to recognize his retirement, and his 32 years here will definitely be missed by us. Our production of Footloose was awarded a Jerry Award for Outstanding Ensemble recently. So the Jerry Awards, for those of you who don't know, that's a regional high school theater program, and they recognize high school theater all around Wisconsin. And being awarded Best Ensemble or Outstanding Ensemble, I'll tell you, is no small accomplishment. So it definitely speaks to our dynamic and cohesive singers, which is so true. Moving on to the Environmental Club. Environmental Club has been active in the lunches, spreading climate-oriented fun facts in honor of Earth Day, which was first celebrated in 1970. Did you know? I learned. The club is also conducting a used clothing drive to promote sustainable shopping and also donate to local charities. Our own Dr. Frederick visited the high school last month to share her story at Coalition's monthly Share and Care. And so these lunch circles normally gather around 10 to 15 students sharing about their mental health. And when Dr. Frederick visited, the library was filled up. Coalition also hosted a sexual assault resource awareness fair during lunches to talk about promoting healthy relationships and the importance of consent. Students in AP classes are in the midst of a 2-week-long AP testing period that is conducted here in this building, just in that other room. So AP stands for Advanced Placement, and these are optional classes that students can take for the chance to earn college credit. So these tests can be as many as 3 hours long, but it's worth it for the potential credit that you can earn. The junior class threw an awesome spring prom dance for the upperclassmen, Flower Gleam and Glow, a Tangled-inspired night. The night featured a live DJ with backup dancers, an automatic photo booth, a romantic grand march setting, and most importantly, music and dancing enjoyed by everybody. 12 juniors were nominated by their teachers and voted upon by peers to be recognized as prom court and royalty members.
I did hear.
You did hear. I was prom queen, which is super, super fun.
Congratulations, Lena.
Thank you. So that was definitely a highlight of the past couple weeks. So now moving on to sports, boys tennis has had a very successful regular season. They've swept a few of the local teams in our area, which involves winning all 7 flights, and they've also ended the season with a 15-7 record. Part of that record was 11 consecutive wins against some of the toughest teams in the state, which is good practice for the conference tournament starting this weekend. Other spring sports highlights include a 16-5 girls softball win against Portage, a 5-game away streak for baseball, a 2nd overall win in Onalaska for golf, and a top 3 in the state rank for girls soccer. So thank you for listening, and now I'll move on to our 2 Question Thursday data report. Did you have any questions about the activity report?
I just wanted to tell you that I learned something today, which is that in tennis, it's called a flight, the like whole match. Didn't know that. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Lena about student report? Yes, Susan.
And who was one of the major people in Footloose on Friday and Saturday night?
Me?
You're always so modest.
Thank you. Yes, very proud of our show.
The whole show was just incredible. The audience just absolutely loved it. And again, we've been at the concerts, and they've been fabulous. So I would encourage the community to watch the high school and the middle school. Except some of those conflict. So you have to just.
Well, regardless, we do have a really strong music program here. Okay, so our data. So I asked the students about kind of what their viewpoint is going forward, looking at this year, past year, and moving forward into next year. And so the question I asked was, what's one change that would help you and or other students feel more prepared, supported, or heard next year? And students really focused on their academic achievement, but also talked about building a more open and communicative student culture. And so on the academic side, there was definitely a strong desire for weighted GPAs, as well as increased access to college and ACT prep materials. And then on the communication side, students were really wanting to see communication between administration and students, also including like soliciting student voice and opinion and kind of allowing a place for students to express those opinions. A couple people actually said that they wanted to see more surveys, so I was pretty pleased to hear that. Students were also wanting to hear communication about the grading system and its cumulative nature. One student was saying, I didn't know that an A- freshman year ruined my GPA, which we'll see in some responses below. There was also some confusion over course selection, especially involving electives and course changes, which is kind of on the topic of what we discussed last meeting, as well as promoting counselors as resources to be really utilized by students, as well as building an enjoyable student culture through fun community building activities. So I'll bring your attention to the next question, which was, next year I want my school community and experience to feel more. And unsurprisingly, we had a lot of fun responses. Students also focused on interested and engaging, as well as relevant and rigorous, which was nice to see. So I brought up a couple of responses here to highlight because I thought they were really fun. One student said, there should be a science class that's just interesting topics. Oh, yes, of course.
Sorry, go ahead, Lena.
But one student just wants to learn about dinosaurs in space, and they would feel very supported with that class. I thought that was pretty wholesome.
Fair.
I'll vote for that.
Fair. Me too.
Wouldn't we all? No, but yeah, if you have a chance, peruse these responses. It was pretty insightful to see kind of what students were getting at. I really enjoy reading these responses. And some of the things like interacting more with class officers or kind of planning more fun, like community student events, I think I can really see us implementing next year, like on student council even. Yeah. So just interesting to hear directly from the students and see what they're thinking. And this last response I wanted to share, they said, not sure. I personally feel pretty welcome. Maybe more inclusive art. So I guess we can work on that.
This is great because, there are some things that I feel like you can think about, right? If there's a desire for, more community building activities, like you said, student council, talking with Principal McGrath about opportunities for student voice, around a number of items. So that's great. I have nothing to say about the baby birds, but I'm sorry that they were not able to experience.
This response was like twice as long as well. I trimmed it down a bit.
Probably a good idea to edit. Just curious. So the weighted grade conversation about GPA is always a hot topic, especially among students that are, high performing. Mm-hmm. So do you think most kids know that colleges unweight them the minute you apply?
I think that students probably rely on a lot of word of mouth about college admissions processes and probably wouldn't know that information.
It's always a big argument because every university, they unweight them because not everybody weights them, so you have to undo it to make things equal. And sometimes I think kids don't realize that. And they think that they're disadvantaged for the unweighted. Unweighted. Yeah. So we can have that conversation.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, Susan.
Well, we did have weighted grades for a while. And they were, ultimately, it was relatively unsuccessful, and the students were the ones who asked us to go back to the regular standard grade. And I think part of it was the interference with the application process, because it wasn't a regular, it was difficult for where you applied to put all the pieces together the way you wanted to see them put together. But it is interesting, because we should look at the research again.
yeah, I think to that point earlier, I think that students would just wouldn't really know there was reasons behind the decision. So, but yeah, there's definitely quite a few of the responses. Really
Oh, you
like
can
that. It was
spread the
fun to
word.
read.
Yeah, absolutely. When I was invited over to speak at lunch, able to meet with a group of students in between, and students talked about communication. And I thought one of the things that they asked that was good is like, you send a lot of emails to our families, but we don't get them. And as high school students, like, why aren't we getting them?
Yeah.
I was like, that's a great question.
Yeah, it's a great question and a really important point.
And they also wondered about putting their cell phone numbers into Infinite Campus, so when like those kind of alerts go out, that they also get them. So we'll start asking for those in registration.
I love that. Yeah, thank you.
So it was a good conversation.
That's great. And a meaningful change as a result of it.
Beautiful.
Any other questions or comments for Lena? As always, great work, Lena.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
All right, we have no public appearances today, is that right, Tish? Okay. So then we're going to move on to discussion item, which is the 2025-2026 preliminary budget. Welcome, Kristen.
Thank you.
Today.
Very summary. So last week, the F&O committee approved the 25-26 preliminary budget to be forwarded to the Board of Education for discussion. Can I steal the? There is a budget packet that contains much more detail that was uploaded to Board Docs, and there's also a presentation that I uploaded yesterday. And this is very similar to the presentation that I gave at F&O, but I added some more information on debt just for more background information. So I really want to start the conversation with the budget timeline, just so everyone kind of knows where we are within the process, get into some estimates, do some kind of budget basics, and then get into the meat of the budget itself. So our one-year process is highlighted where we are right now. It does take a year to build the budget, and we start right over again after we finish. So we're sort of midway through with this preliminary budget approval that we ask the board to approve prior to our fiscal year starting on July 1st. Then we will have our annual meeting, which is the preliminary budget presented over again. It's required by state statute. And then finally in October, we have enough information to finalize the budget for the board's approval. Because this is going to be the first year of the biennial budget, and the state hasn't determined the state budget yet, we have to have a lot of estimates in order to build our budget for the 25-26 year. The estimates that I used are fairly conservative, I believe. The revenue limit increase of $325 per pupil, that's something that the governor put into the budget for the next 400 years, so I thought it was safe to use that as the per pupil amount. Also, projected enrollment's a very big piece to our revenue puzzle, and we did use projected enrollment to determine that. Also kept the categorical the same at $742 per pupil. It did increase the special education aid slightly. It's supposed to be 30%, but it is an amount that's set, and so depending upon all the expenditures, it looks like we're tracking more at about 29% reimbursement for this year, so a little less than what we budgeted. The hope is that we can get a little bit more in special education aid this coming year. From a salary and benefit perspective, I did budget a 2.95% increase, which is the consumer price base wage amount for all employees. There's also an additional $930,000 in supplemental pay for employees. This is assuming a 2.2% increase in health and dental insurance, which we'll get into later this evening, and it does include the staffing plan that the board approved in March. Building department budgets, they were given the same allocations that they had last year. They were able to take that pot and distribute it as needed within their buildings, and they had conversations at the building level and provided me that information, and I budgeted accordingly. From a long-term planning perspective, there is a $1 million VAV project for the high school that is in the operating budget. So that was something that was part of our long-range capital plan that was identified as a priority for 25-26. And so we were able to get that budgeted for the 25-26 year. In addition, there is slightly over $500,000 that we did set aside in the into the fund balance to help build our fund balance up. Debt from non-referendum debt was increased because of that $7 million operational loan and the refinancing of some other loans that we had that had due dates in the spring that were $2 million and $1 million, and we didn't have the cash to pay, so we refinanced those. So that increased our debt payment about $750,000 for the 25-26 year. Capital project plan, we have identified with the help of McKinstry $24.3 million projects over the course of the next 10 years. This is present value. It doesn't include anything in terms of inflationary expenditures. It is something that we will update every year. It's a fluid document that gets brought before the F&O committee as things change. You'll see there's a slightly larger increase in 28-29 of that $4 million. There's some roofing in there. So as we progress through the years and look at how that roof is performing, we may be able to spread that cost out a little bit. But it does give us a picture for the next 10 years of what we're looking at in terms of capital project expenditures. And, we just need to start having some conversation of how we're going to fund that, considering the debt that we already do have in Fund 38. We also have started to look at things that weren't in this capital project plan, such as athletic sites, auditorium, and we did find about $5.3 million over the next 10 years. Bulk of that is in auditorium, and the turf will be up for renewal in a few years. So those are the things that are in that as well. To get into some basics regarding school district budgeting, just for those that don't have a good understanding, gives you some background as to some of the challenges we're faced with and what drives our budget. The revenue limit calculation is really the largest piece of revenue that we get. It's 80%, and it really is based on enrollment and what the state gives us in terms of a per pupil increase each year. So there's really only two ways to increase that 80% of our revenue, and it's either our enrollment is increasing or we get a per pupil increase. If we get both, that's the jackpot. That helps us a lot with inflationary expenditures as we move forward. The revenue limit history, this is revenue limit enrollment. So it's very different than the kids that are sitting in our seats. It looks like, it's climbing rapidly. It's not reflective of the kids that are in our seats. This includes summer school. It also includes our resident students that open and roll out to other places. So this is what's used for the revenue limit. However, it's not reflective of the students that are attending our schools. From a resident enrollment attending MGSD over the last few years, you can see we're relatively flat in that time frame. And as we move forward and really right-size our open enrollment to open seats, our overall enrollment will likely decrease and will be right-sized to educate our resident students and also provide, if we do have open seats, the opportunity for students to open enroll. The per pupil history that the state has provided districts has been rough the past few years. If you look at this chart, the green line is what the district would have received in a per pupil increase had it been based on inflation. The blue line is what we actually received. So that big dip in 2011-12 is from Act 10. And then since that time, you can see how we, have not kept up with inflation over the years. And in fact, our per pupil amount would be $4,000 more per pupil, or $13.8 million in revenue. So that's a big, obviously, gap between inflation and revenue, and is why a lot of districts throughout the state have really struggled with keeping up with inflationary costs. The revenue limit per pupil is unique by school district. So it's not like a set amount was given to every district and we're all like on an equal ground. It really went back to 1993. And if you had a very conservative board at the time and really restricted spending, those districts are really suffering now because they had a lower per pupil amount than a lot of other districts. Monona Grove, we had 6,875, and in this year, we had 13,828. We're estimating 14,679, adding that 325. Again, had we been indexed to inflation, that number would be almost $19,000. So how are we funded? We calculate that revenue limit that gives us a pot of money. It's 80% of our revenue, and it's funded through two areas. It's property tax and general state aid. So we take our revenue limit amount, we subtract the state aid from that, and that's the amount that we levy to our communities. It's not, general state aid isn't additional money. It's great when the state does allocate more in general state aid, but it provides property tax relief for school districts. It does not provide additional money. I just went over this calculation. You take your pot of money, revenue limit, subtract state aid, and that's your property taxes. So how do we get state aid, and how is that determined? It's really a formula that takes the property value per student. So the value of all the homes and commercial property in the district, and it's divided by the number of students that we have. It also factors in cost per student, so you want to keep your cost fairly low if you are a higher property value per student district. If you're a lower property value per student district, you actually get more aid the more you spend. And we're leaning towards more like you want to control your costs, so your aid comes in at a point that you want. And obviously enrollment is a piece. So the purpose behind this is really to take that state aid and divide it to go to districts that potentially, the taxpayers couldn't afford to pay higher taxes, and higher property value per student would receive less aid. So it's meant to equalize that aid across the state. The state average property value per student was $975,000 this year. Ours this year was under that, so $951,000. So we would get slightly more than average because our value per student is less than the average this year. Our aid to cost ratio, meaning how much aid pays for our expenditures, is 40% of our expenditures in 24-25. That's estimated to decrease slightly in 25-26 due to an estimated equalized value per student increasing to over $1 million, which is higher than the state average. And this is based on actual value from last year, because state aid lags a year, of an 11% increase. So our value went up pretty significantly as a district, which is why we're projecting a higher property value per student. That all will result in approximately a $650,000 decrease in state aid. This chart is to reflect that how aid to cost ratio marries with that equalized value per member. So the blue line is the equalized value per member, and that is our equalized value per member compared to the state average. So in 2016, we were higher than average. In 24-25, we reduced lower. And then this green line is our total aid to cost ratio. And you can see as the blue line goes down, the green line goes up. And in 25-26, because our blue line's going up, we're projecting slightly less in state aid. Our state aid history has been positive the past few years. We've received much more aid, a little dip for 25-26, but again, it's really early to predict where we'll end up with the state budget still not settled and our equalized value and all those things. The district has 9 funds. Tonight we'll talk about the 2 largest funds, Fund 10, the general fund. The majority of our budget happens out of Fund 10. And then Fund 27, which is our special education fund. More detail on the other funds can be found in that budget packet that is attached to the agenda item as well. Fund 10 revenues are projected to decrease 6%. That is mainly because we received that large operational loan in 24-25, and we had a lease that we had to recognize for $8 million. We're not anticipating any technology leases nor additional loans. So that's really the reason why that was reduced. From an expenditure standpoint, by object, this is the what that we spend. We had an increase of 1% of expenditures. You can see salary and benefits went up slightly, reductions in other areas based on our experience this 24-25 and keeping other budgets steady. You'll see insurance and adjustments are increasing. That's our property insurance, that's our workers' compensation. We're just anticipating a larger increase in that for 25-26. From a fund balance perspective, you'll see the history here in 23-24. You'll see that $4.4 million deficit. That reduced our fund balance from $6.5 million to $2.1 million, which is about 3.5% of our expenditures. Our target by policy is 15%, so we are striving to get back to that level. In 24-25, we had to revise our budget to meet more realistic expenditures. That resulted in a $1.5 million deficit. However, we did get that $7 million loan, which will give us a $5.4 million surplus that will be added to the fund balance. So on the books, we'll have a $7.6 million fund balance at the end of 24-25. However, if we take out that $7 million operational loan, we would have $600,000 in fund balance without that. And so just wanted to keep track of sort of, where we would be before that loan. So pretty low level at that 1%. The 25-26 budget adds a $500,000 to that number. So we're heading in the right direction, but we'll certainly have to have conversations about, our strategies moving forward in terms of paying down debt or other things.
If I could just jump in for a second on that one, Kristen, it's the same comment I made during F&O is I just want to make sure that everyone's clear that the fund balance in actuality is not going to be at 1.9%, right? When we talk about compliance with policy, we are going to be much closer to that with absolutely. That's the real fund balance is the 8.1, right? Because we borrowed the money, we're committed to it through 2029 minimally. The interest is front loaded, so when we hit May 1st of 2029, we'll have paid 73% of the interest, right? So the opportunity to save is minimal once we can start paying off the loan. So I just wanted to clarify that we don't have as far to build the fund balance up to hit policy compliance.
Right. Yes. That's
the 1.991% might
That was going to
apply.
be my question. So you said that it would be 8% for the fund balance, adding the $7 million in? Is that right?
Yeah, if you take the $8 million and divide by the expenditures, that will give you the percentage of.
It's actually a lot closer to 15%. I think it's like 12% or 12.5% or something. Yeah.
I can include that for the.
It'd be nice to see it.
Yeah, it'd be helpful to see both metrics. And I think that you're right, though. As a board, we're going to have a discussion around how aggressive we want to be to get to 15.
And when we get to the debt slides, I can explain a little bit more about, the options that we have. Fund 27 is a special education fund. I just want to point out the largest amount of funding that comes from, funds, Fund 27 is from our general operation fund. So we need to take out $6.7 million from Fund 10 in order to keep our Fund 27 balanced. It's statutorily required that we have a balanced Fund 27, so we have to do that. We get about $3.1 million from the state. And about $840,000 from federal sources. That is our federal IDEA grant and our preschool grant. So that would be something to look at as it relates to the federal budget and potential impact on our budget. In terms of expenditures, again, by object, we're estimating a 0.8% increase in overall expenditures in Fund 27. Talking a little bit about debt, we have two two funds with debt. So Fund 38 is non-referendum debt, meaning that the community did not vote on that debt. The downside of the Fund 38 debt is that all the debt payments come out of our Fund 10 operational budget. It means that we have less to spend on operations because we have this debt. So we have a total of $22.5 million of principal balance in Fund 38. And our referendum debt, which the community does vote on, we have almost $57 million left on that. I did include all the payoff years here so that you can see when those individual issues are paid off.
Quick question. Do you happen to know, so I see the total of the debt for Fund 38. Do you happen to know the operational impact, though, in an annual budget, in a budget year?
Yeah, so this next slide shows the debt payments each year and when they fall off. So the Fund 39 debt is the light blue. So that is, we have to pay that back. We issued bonds for it. The payments are, set in stone. We have a pretty good interest rate there, so I don't know that we'll refinance anytime during the last years of these bond issues. However, you can see how there's a step down on Fund 38. We have, a little bit of an increase here in 26, 27, but then, some debt drops off and we step down until, we get to like 2034, 35, where, we have a significant chunk that is able to go back into Fund 10 to pay for things. So we'll still have an $800,000 debt payment each year until 2044, 45, unless we were to refinance or pay it off sooner. And just to go back to that other slide, you can see that operational loan, it is through 2034, but we could refinance or pay it off early if we wanted to. Some of these other issues we could look at either paying off or refinancing for. So we have some options with it in that to have more conversations about what do we want to do moving forward. I think it's important to really look at the impact of Fund 38 on your operational budget because we are so limited in the revenue that we get. This is really an area that can, if you get yourself stuck in a debt payment that, $2.4 million, we could have that money to spend on our operations, and right now we don't. So that's just something to consider.
Am I recalling correctly that a portion of the Fund 38 debt is offset by energy grants? Is that right? The two energy loans?
Yep, okay. Absolutely. We do get credits for that. Total expenditures are projected to increase 1.6%. You see that large decrease in capital projects. That is the money that we issued Fund 38 debt for. So we received the funding from the bonds, and we're doing the projects that the board approved within that money. So we're just finishing out the projects, and so you'll see that steady decline, and we likely won't have any funds left after 25, 26. And you also see the increase in the non-referendum debt that, again, is due to the refinancing and the $7 million operating loan. From a tax levy perspective, it is really, really early to estimate this, but based on the information that we do know, we are projecting a 14.8% increase in our levy. Biggest reason being the $6.2 million recurring referendum that we're able to add to our levy this year, and $750 less in state aid. And again, that increase in operational loan and fund referendum debt is set in stone. So that's just based on what the payment schedule is, not anything that we could alter. The tax rate based on the levy, we're estimating a $10.55 levy rate. It's a 9% increase. The reason that this is lower than the property or our levy as a total is because this is based on equalized value. So we're projecting our equalized value to go up next year, 4.99%. So your value goes up, meaning that the increased levy is spread over much more value. And it is also important to note that this is not the rate that you'll see on your tax bill. Each individual municipality determines their levy rate based on their assessed value. So this is just a way we take all of the municipalities that are in our district and we create an equalized rate to get an idea of where we stand. But can't emphasize enough, your individual tax bill will likely be different than this.
Which is why this is really an estimate, not.
Oh, well, it's an estimate because we don't know what our equalized value is going to increase until October 1st. And, the levy won't be set until we have our enrollment set on the third Friday. So this is really early to estimate any of this. But, we likely will have a higher levy because we added that $6.2 million to our revenue limit based on that recurring referendum that we had. So
I asked that because some people ask me what the mill rate is.
yeah.
I'll say, $10.50, but
Yeah.
it's going to change, So.
Well, and it's just, I think the mill rate is good just to track from a historical perspective. So this tells us how we've calculated based on equalized value, what our mill rate history has been. And so, while we're going up this year, historically it's been much higher. So the trend has been downward. In terms of next step, we really hope that the state budget's approved in June. Sometimes it's been as late as September, which makes things difficult. But if we can get that state budget approved, we'll have obviously more information to finalize the budget. We will get a state aid estimate from the DPI on July 1st that will tell us more about what we'll get in state aid next year. Still not a final number, but an estimate. And then over the summer, there's a lot of new hires. There's we get final numbers on things we're estimating in terms of expenditures. And so all that will be updated. We do have that annual meeting in September. Preliminary budget will be presented again. We'll get the third Friday in September information for our revenue limit. And then October is really when we get everything, equalized values finalized, our state aid is certified, and we're able to present a final budget for the board to consider. And that's all I had.
Questions? I have a comment and then a question. My first is a comment, which is just to say thank you for not just the detailed presentation, but the detailed packet as well. It's really nice to have that as a compendium. And in my time on the board, we've never received such a detailed and well laid out compendium to the budget. So thank you.
Yeah, if you have any other suggestions or requests to add to that packet, please let me know. I'd be happy to revise that for the June meeting.
Great, thank you. The question that I had was around federal funding. So, I mean, I understand IDEA dumps into 39. Do the other titles dump into Fund 10 then for us? And what does that look like?
So you'll see here the federal amount in Fund 10 is, your Title I. There's a portion of IDEA that is in Fund 10, Title II, Title 4A, Title III. There's, a lot of sort of smaller amounts. So not a huge amount in Fund 10, but again, still, hundreds of thousands of dollars. So from an overall impact, it's, over $1 million that we could be looking at. From a food service perspective, I don't know where things will end up at this point. I don't have enough information to know what, if any, reductions we'll get in reimbursements for school lunches. So we'll obviously keep an eye on that.
I was also going to say thank you for really detailed, I'm not really good with budget stuff, and you made me feel like I understand what's going on. So thank you for that. And also thank you that all of this is in the public content so everyone can see it, because that's a lot of detail, and I just really appreciate, and especially the historical perspective on some of how we've gotten to where we are with, here was our mill rate and it went down, but then it went up, all of that. I just really appreciate that. So thank you.
Other questions? Yes, Susan.
The other thing that's really helpful, particularly for me, again, having watched this for years, but never really felt our feet were down in the mud like it has been. People continue to say, well, what are you doing to make a difference? And if you go to operations and finance and you see what you present there, And then again, as our board leadership was just saying, you can come to this meeting as well. And so not understanding that the community is holding us accountable for where we've been. The helpful thing is they can see where our leadership has focused in terms of importance and what the board knows and understands. So it's, again, and then you really need to go see your legislators when you have the opportunity.
Yeah.
Go have the conversation.
Yeah, it's a good opportunity right now, especially with the state budget being up in the air and the federal budget going to go to an interesting reconciliation process to see what comes up from it. Yeah, Philip.
Yeah, and I just wanted to acknowledge the effort and the work that goes into producing something like this. So the format and everything is terrific, right? But the sheer amount of energy and work that I know you had to go through and your team and others to actually get to this, right? Especially in the context of what we're accomplishing this year, I think makes this even more impressive. So I really appreciate all of the efforts. This is not easy, and this is so much better than I expected us to be, at this point. So I'm just really, really grateful and pleased that this is the preliminary budget that we're looking at for next year. So, yeah, this is awesome.
On that feels like the right note to say you can take a break through, I think, 2 action items, and then we'll see you again in a minute. Yeah, you're welcome to stay there. Thank you, Kristen. All right, moving on to action items. The first one is the employment contract for Granite Ridge School Associate Principal, which we had discussed in closed session. Can I get a motion, please?
I move approval of the employment contract for the Granite Ridge Associate Principal as presented.
Second.
Any further discussion? Any opposition or voice vote? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. Next up, employment contract for Winnequa School Associate Principal, also discussed in closed session. Can I get a motion, please?
I move approval of the employment contract for Winnequa School Associate Principal as presented.
Any further discussion? Any opposition to voice vote? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. Next up, the 2026 Health and Dental Insurance Renewal. I see Alice here too. Is he coming up to?
Al can come up. I'm going to try my best to present, Al, and you can correct me if I do anything wrong. But you also have, please, he has some handouts because a lot of the things in this presentation are very tiny.
It's not an insurance presentation unless Al comes with the big paper.
But this was discussed twice at Personnel and approved to bring forward to the board for consideration. This is tied to the compensation plan.
Actually, before you go, can I pause you? Because I realize, Al, we have a new school board member that probably doesn't know who you are. So do you mind just introducing yourself really quick to Stephanie?
Hi, Al Yeager, benefit consultant. My pleasure.
Nice to meet you.
Likewise.
Thank you, Al. All right, sorry, Kristen, proceed.
No problem. Okay, so tonight we want to discuss our health and dental renewal for 2026. It sounds very early, but I'm so pleased that we have, we're able to move this forward at this point in time because it really helps us from a budget perspective. And the heavy lifting was complete, so we don't have to do this in the fall. So we first look at the renewal for Dean, and our experience is about 130% over what our premiums collected are. So that resulted in, if we just were to have a straight renewal as is of about an 18% increase in the Dean plan. The GHC renewal came in at around 8.5%. So it actually was a 10.3% increase, as you can see on the bottom there, but we did have a rate cap with GHC at 8.5%. There's a 1% commission built in there, so it's actually been reduced to 7.5%. That's the little note on the side here. We did ask courts to propose, and they declined based on our activity and the risk actually in future years. They declined to provide any kind of a proposal for us. So our status quo you can see there's two plans. So we have our Dean plan, which is Plan 1. We have 187 people on that plan of employees. And on Plan 2 is GHC. We have 259 for a total of 446 employees on our plan. You can see at the top, that's our current plan amount with the $200, $400 deductible and some prescription drug charges. Based on the premium rates that we received on the status quo renewal, that would have provided a 7.5% increase overall. But again, the Dean, those that were on Dean would see a significant increase to the tune of 11.9%. So big increase for the district and for those that are on the Dean plan. With some design changes that we received feedback from the MGEA on, a $500, $1,000 deductible and a $20 copay reduced our renewal to 2.2%. So that actually positively benefits those on Dean, and actually their premium payment is much lower, and GHC is quite reasonable as well at that 2.2%. You got that large packet in front of you showing the comparables. We do compare very well to other districts. We are one of the few districts that offer a dual choice. And so when you offer dual choice, you got to pay a little bit more for choice because you're spreading, those risks to two different insurance companies. And so they, we have to pay for that risk. So some of the districts that are also switching to one carrier is Verona will switch to Dean only in July. And Middleton Cross Plains is already with Dean only. So there's very few that have dual choice, which is a big change. And even with the deductible that we are proposing, we are now outside of our comparables in terms of that. Any questions on health insurance before I get into dental?
Susan.
Again, having gone through this process for several years and having significant background in this, and also reflecting back on the interview process we had with the expertise from the providers, there were several major points that were made in the dual choice. And a major consideration has always continued to be for us the number that would have to move, understanding that may be a movement we have to make. And the concern, I think, previously was to have to make that move in 1 year. The other thing is access to mental health facilities and to life-saving, I'll use the example of transplant expertise. And so a major thought process that seemed to occur, I think, when having these discussions in the healthcare committee when I was previously on that was access to care and the type of care. Because otherwise, do you want them to have to go to Mayo's to have that expertise? I mean, it's really difficult. And so, again, those were major considerations, and it was a major factor when Act 10 happened. Because
Do you have a question, Susan? Or is just kind of?
And I think it goes to Al has been involved in that, but have you had the opportunity to have those discussions so they understand kind of where we came from and why those decisions were made then?
With staff or with GHC and Dean?
Bad.
Oh, I don't even know what, you were probably on the state plan back then.
Susan, to clarify, we're not going to one plan, we're dual planning.
I understand that.
Okay.
But
Can you clarify your question?
the question basically was, do you feel comfortable, even though it may not be the first financial choice, with the dual plan?
Yes, I think we learned quickly last fall when we tried to make a change based on, the significant financial position we were in. I learned that, there's much more conversation and feedback that as a district we needed to have to do anything as substantial as that. And I think though that conversation did open that door to a lot of those questions about, transplants, and, Dean does refer out to UW for those type of things. So it's not like the access would not be there. But I think it is, so this year we're, talking about a plan design change. And I think by having the decision now, we'll have plenty of time going into 2027 to get everyone comfortable and questions asked about what's our next step in terms of our health insurance. And maybe it is still to have a dual choice, but I think just having the conversation has helped and has educated people on the differences.
Other questions? Good, thank you.
From a dental perspective, we do have two plans. Right now, the district pays 100% of the premium for both single plans, 80% of the family premier plan, which is a larger network, and 90% of the family preferred plan, which is a narrow network. Right now, what we're experiencing with dental is those that are on the narrow network are actually being subsidized by those that are on the premier plan, the wider network, because they are costing more than they're contributing in terms of premium. And so to look at, some choices moving forward, this is the premier preferred plan, this is the narrow network plan renewal, and it shows it would be an 18% increase. Now, we were blending the premium, so we weren't like having separate premiums for the separate plans. And so with that 18% increase, what we've done in the past is we sort of blended that with the premier and basically have kept that plan going by the premier plan premiums. The premier plan actually would be a renewal under 100%. So it would be a slight decrease. But again, we're blending those plans. And so we'd have to have, this is cutting off on me. So we'd have to have, a bigger impact on everyone as a whole if we kept things the same. So what we're proposing is to consolidate to one plan, which would be the wide network plan, the premier plan, and have the district pay 80% of single and 80% of family. So we have one plan, and the premiums are set to one rate, and it would be a 2.2% increase for the district rather than much higher. So there will be an increase in terms of those on the preferred plan moving and singles, but it's aligned with sort of their expenditures as well. So it's $11.37 for single and $31.77. Need to get my eyes checked for family. Yeah. And that's dental.
Questions about dental at all? Great. Any questions in general? Comments in general? I do want to thank you, Kristen, and Tanya, and MGEA. I know that you've been talking about this and working on this. For folks that weren't there last week, personnel did meet and got this presentation as well, and making the recommendation for us to move approval of this today. If there are no questions, I would love a motion, please.
Approval of the 2026 health and dental insurance renewal as presented.
Any further discussion?
Can I just pop in real quick?
Yeah, of course.
Thank you all for working together so hard, and hopefully everybody will feel really good moving forward this year. So they already know before the school year begins kind of what to expect. So thank you.
Well, employees should, right? Know what you're making and know what your benefits are going to be. Great. You want a roll call vote or voice vote this? Any opposition to voice vote? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries. Great. All right, thank you, Al.
Thank you, Al.
Always bringing the big paper.
Oh, the color. Oh my gosh.
All right, next up is the 2025-2026 Certified Staff Collective Bargaining Agreement.
Every year, the Board of Education works with the MGEA to come to an agreement on base wage. Base wage can't increase higher than consumer price index each year. This year, that consumer price index as set by the WRC is 2.95%. It's my understanding that the MGEA has an agreement with regard to base wage, and we're asking that the board approve the 25-26 Certified Staff Collective Bargaining Agreement with a 2.95% increase in base wage.
I move approval of the 2025-2026 Certified Staff Collective Bargaining Agreement as presented.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries. Next up, the 2025-2026 Certified Staff Compensation Plan.
This item was discussed at Personnel and approved to be forwarded to the Board of Education. Along with that 2.9% base wage increase, we do have a proposed salary schedule attached to this board document, which shows a $1,200 step increase moving from step 14 to 15. It includes a minimum of a 4% increase for all MGEA certified staff. It does add a school psychologist / PT, physical therapist lane, so that incorporates their leadership stipend and provides some more comparable salaries for those positions. The total increase is 7%, or almost $1.4 million, and it is built into the preliminary budget. So we're asking for your consideration of this item tonight.
I'll move approval of the 25-26 Certified Staff Compensation Plan as presented.
Any further discussion?
I just wanted to comment that I said this at Personnel, but I'd like to say it again. It's just awesome to see such a clear, simple salary schedule. And I know that took a lot of work from the MGA and administration and everybody involved to get there. And I just think it's awesome to see this move in that direction. So
Yeah, I agree. And I'm really excited to see the salary movements on it too. I think that'll be good, particularly, I mean, across the board, particularly our starting salary. So that's great. Anything else? Yes.
Yeah, I think, as we entered into the year and asked staff to do a lot of hard things, and obviously we're continuing, like hard things are still going to happen, it's the work, but really wanting to get to a meaningful salary schedule as we continue to work towards having a competitive pay scale so that we can keep the best that we have and continue to recruit really good educators to do great things for kids. So hard work's not going to stop, but we hope that this is a step towards getting to a competitive pay scale.
Yes, Susan.
Well, because this is really new, and I want to make sure the community really understands what our leadership has done. But our superintendent basically has implemented communication avenues that we haven't had in the past. And I think that has been incredibly helpful, not only out in the buildings, but with MGEA and the representation. And then our board leadership putting people into the personnel committee who have background and experience in the arenas of staffing. It builds a confidence for me as a board member as we make these decisions. Before, it was very difficult to make these decisions. It was stressful. It was difficult to come into a board meeting. And now that we know the communication lines are being established, it just, I think, makes it more comfortable, at least for me as a board member, to come in and hear the presentations. I want to thank you.
Any other discussion? Great, we have a motion and a second. Are you voting or abstaining? Okay. Yeah, that's why I was asking. Roll call vote. Rochelle?
Aye.
Philip?
Aye.
Eric? Janice?
Aye.
Susan?
Aye.
Stephanie? Elizabeth, aye. Ayes have it. Motion carries. Next up, the 2025-2026 school nutrition fees.
This item was also discussed at the F&O committee meeting last week and approved to bring forward to the Board of Education tonight. The fees that we are proposing are up on the screen. We did not increase fees last year, and we hit for 24-25, and we do have a built-in deficit this year. And one of the reasons being is that we did not increase prices last year. We did have a pretty comfortable fund balance, which is one of the reasons why we didn't increase prices. However, with all the food costs going up, we really think it's necessary to increase prices for 25-26. One thing to note is that food service is self-sustaining, so we don't use tax dollars to subsidize our school nutrition program. And we need to build a fund balance in order to replenish our equipment and, other things for repairs. So while we'll never have a zero fund balance because we need to have at least some funds in reserve, it is not a profit center. We really do aim to make it neutral.
Eric.
I move approval of the 2025-2026 school nutrition fees as presented.
Further discussion. Eric.
What is the balance that we have now on unpaid for meals?
$41,000.
How common is that year to year to have a balance?
It depends on how school districts handle collections of those funds. Obviously, you wanted to have it be a minimum, and if you have a really good process in place that communicates to parents and, communicates consistently, and then at some point, at the end of the year, if they have a negative balance, then we send them a final notice of amounts owed, and then we, if they don't pay within 30 days, we refer to collections from Waukesha County, and they can intercept tax returns.
How many do we refer to collections at the end of the year?
This year, we were catching up because we had a lot of school fees that hadn't been paid for many years or collected. And so we sent out about 800 letters to families, and we had a total of $100,000 in unpaid fees. We're talking about damage to Chromebooks not returned, fees for,
Taking aside the equipment and stuff, damages, I guess I just have a concern as a board member for any families that are paying, that there's things going to collections for food and nutrition. And I'm wondering if that's something we could take a look at to see if we can figure out a way that doesn't happen.
So all year we've been, trying to make people aware of their fund, their balances or negative balances. And the school social workers at each building have been working through process of, obviously, if a family qualifies for free and reduced lunch, that's one thing, but if they don't, right, we have people who are, working and figuring out other ways to help them with that. So obviously, there has to be some engagement to be able to do that, then working towards how do we do that in a way, whether it be a payment plan, some resources that we have to help pay it off, some of those different things, because, obviously we want to take the kindest approach when people can't pay.
Yeah.
But the other side of that is that if they can pay, these are lunches that are subsidized by all of our students.
Right.
Price of meals.
I appreciate the comment though too, Eric, because I think it's a balance between, obviously there's the eligibility for free and reduced, and there's that gray area of folks that aren't otherwise eligible for free and reduced, but, still may be struggling, and you don't want to perpetuate cycles of poverty over school meals.
Yeah, there's people that probably can afford to pay. They're just, have missed it or are behind. But
Or
then
ignore the
there's
emails they
probably
get.
my guess is a large group who may not be able to afford to pay, whether they're on free or reduced lunch or not. And that's the group that I'm concerned about.
I agree with you. I do wonder, speaking of kind of payment pieces, and maybe this is just a me problem, but I don't find Infinite Campus the most intuitive place to pay my school meals. And so I'm just kind of curious, is there any other way to do it?
Yes.
As a person who's received many, you have a negative meal account balance and for a long time.
Right. Yeah. We are looking at all the avenues of payments in the district and trying to consolidate where we can and have a consistent approach. So we have Infinite Campus, we have Our School Today, we have Shopify for the school store, we have Sportsman for the pool, and we also have GoFan for our athletic. It's a lot. It's a lot when you're talking about bank reconciliations and all this, money coming in and going out from different areas. So the more that we can consolidate, the better. I'll have to take a look at school or food service fees. Is it separate from?
It's in the school store, and you got to add a thing, and you can only add it in chunks, and then we have per child, and they don't share, because last year I had an experience where one of my kids was negative, but the other one was flush. It was very strange. But the other thing that I think would be helpful, and it's yes, to answer that question, in my experience, and I see families here nodding, so I can't be only just me not being able to figure out how to do that. The other thing that I think would be helpful as a companion piece for parents is to me, it's one thing if your kids are doing lunch every once in a while, right? But if you have kids that are consistently doing lunch and breakfast, it would be nice to know what is that on a month? What's the month that, because when you go to put it in, you just sort of make it up.
I think if there were ever a way to offer an auto replenishment option,
yes,
I would be curious to know what percentage of our missed fees would just not be missed anymore.
That's what I'm saying. You have to go to the school store and you got to make it up. And so you pay your
whenever
balance.
the balance drops below $10, automatically knock 30 into it or something, right?
Yeah.
Autopilot.
It doesn't even if you sign up, because you have to sign up for sports through the Infinite Campus, and it doesn't give you a fee of the sport when you sign up. Instead, it later on, so you don't even realize you missed it.
Yes, and I think, we've learned a lot about how fees are administered and collected here, and we can do way better.
Yeah, we don't
need
to
the end of the story.
We don't need to belabor it, but I think, to Eric's point, I think if you have a reduced volume of people who have unpaid fees, then you can really catch families that are in need of support and reach out in order to find those solutions. But 800 is I know it's 800 total, but that's an unwieldy number for a staff person to comb through.
Also, I think that this is new, right? In the past years, we just absorbed it. And so this is also, we're setting up to be going on the right path to making sure that we hold families accountable if they can. And if they can't, there are systems in place of support.
Or school meals.
Well, that's good feedback. I'll take a look into that as I'm looking at all these other fee payments and trying to streamline and make things easier.
I don't think anyone's going to complain if we get a new school meal system. Yes, Susan.
Again, I'm just looking for clarity here. So we recently sent out 800 letters, approximately 800 letters, to families that owed for a variety of things within the district that had not paid.
Correct.
Okay. And for example, how far back did those letters go? So you would have sent them to students for how far back? Because you haven't gotten any phone calls.
Oh, yeah.
Had a lot
I was going to say.
We have had a lot of
'cause
phone
I'm
calls and a
getting
lot
them
of
and I'm
emails,
telling them
yes.
to call you. Again, were we aware?
So I appreciate the question, Susan, and I think we can think about having it as a discussion item, sort of how this process happened and worked. I want to be mindful of the fact that we're agendized to talk about the school nutrition fees and not like fees in general.
I think that's.
But it's a fair question, and I think maybe at the next meeting, we can just have a quick discussion around like that.
A lot of lessons learned,
Yep.
things that we would approach differently.
Well, and
Yeah, it
it's
sounds like a great board discussion, but I want to move us to,
Again, knowing it was operational, in the governance seat that you're sitting, if you haven't gotten very clear notification it's going to happen, you kind of go, oh, what? So
and I will note too that it was shared in at least two that I can remember, board updates from Tanya on Friday. So on her Fridays.
too.
Yeah. So, all right, I want to.
I didn't know how far it was going
Yes,
to go.
I hear you. It's noted. Let's kind of put that in for future discussion items so we can just understand more of the process. It's helpful because we'll get questions in the community. And then let's move. Yes, let's move to vote. Just to remind everybody, we're talking about the nutrition fees as presented. So all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries. Oh, next, moving on, the variable L valve project at the high school, which we heard about earlier in the budget.
Yes, and we did discuss this project with the board at the April 30th meeting, I believe, as well as the Finance and Operations Committee. We asked for quotes to manage this project from both McKinstry and C.G. Schmidt. Those bids are in board docs and executive content. Our recommendation is to utilize C.G. Schmidt as the project manager for this project. They did provide an estimate of what the total project would cost. We're really looking at what their fees are in terms of managing the project. What will happen next is they will obtain bids from subcontractors for the work. The number that you see in those quotes are just that, quotes and not to exceed amounts. Once we get the bids, that'll be our guaranteed maximum price, and we'll bring that back to the board for final approval once we have all that set. So tonight, we're just looking for approval of the project with a not to exceed amount. I have to open up my.
Sorry, can you explain the difference between the May 7th document and the May 8th document?
So one is a response from McKinstry and the other.
They're both C.G. Schmidt.
One is one is the lump sum construction cost.
Got it.
636.
Got it.
And the other is, shows you the breakdown of where they get that number. So their fee and, so we're looking at a approval of not to exceed $636 and $636,194 for
Higher
this
one.
project.
Okay, thank you.
And I think you'd put $1 million in the preliminary budget. Yeah.
So this is one of those things I'm talking about, adjustments of expenditures. As we know, things they'll change for adjusted budget. That is the right number, right? That includes. Yes. Okay. Just want to make sure I have it right.
All right, can I get a motion, please?
Move approval of the variable air valve project at Monona Grove High School as presented.
Any further discussion? Yes, Susan.
Just want to ask one more time. This is something we absolutely have to do.
They were failing.
That was the presentation. I just want to make sure the public clearly understands that. Because when, as a board, previously, whenever we had to make cuts, we had a full list of things. And the board previously cut all the capital projects. I mean, no matter what. So I just, again, clarity is that this is a critical project that needs to be done.
Yes, they're failing. Individual rooms are failing, and we've had to replace them, which is very inefficient. They're original to the building itself, and they're past their useful life. So to make sure that we don't have a room that doesn't have the appropriate temperature at any given time, it's really a necessary project. This is the highest priority that McKinstry, an outside firm, identified as well as something that's needed.
Yeah, as these fail, I mean, the lead time can vary quite a bit if we're replacing them individually. And then not only do we lose heating and cooling abilities for those spaces, we don't have outside airflow going into, as we're required to have certain percentages in occupied spaces.
Thank you. I appreciate that, so that the community can hear this. We can reference actually this meeting rather than trying to have us specifically answer, because I think that's very helpful. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Great. Voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. Keep us posted when you got an official contract. All right, next up, policy update, PO 1055 committees, which was at the request of Philip, so I will hand it over to you.
Yeah, so if you open up the attached policy document, you scroll all the way to the very end to see the proposed change. It's letter F under the volunteer community and staff members appointment to standing committee section. So very last part of the policy. The reason why I am requesting that we add this additional language is because we appointed community members midway through the 24-25 school year, and those community members have only been on the committee now for approximately half a year, and we are really, I think, just kind of hitting our stride. And I think it would be great to, for this particular cohort of community volunteers, give them the opportunity to continue to serve for the 25-26 year, as opposed to going right back to the interview process and soliciting new candidates. So this additional sentence at the end of letter F would give us the ability to do that. Of course, if a community member wants to step aside at this point, they certainly can, but at least we'd have the option to allow a community member to remain on the committee for an entire year. I can say with for F&O, this applies to F&O as well as TLE. With F&O, we just did the preliminary budget, right? So we're just getting into the weeds of the budget for the upcoming year, and it would be great to keep the consistency on the committee. So that's why we're asking. The reason why this didn't go through policy is simply a matter of urgency. So if we weren't going to do this, right, if we were going to leave our policy as written, we would immediately have to begin the solicitation process because we need lead time to post the notice that we're asking for volunteers. Then we would have to do the interviews, which could be over a dozen people if it was similar to the last time we went through this, because the term would start July 1st. So we need to know now, whether we are actually going to turn over our community volunteers or not. So that's the sense of urgency in this one. And the last comment I'll make is I know the expectation that I have is that this particular policy could be reviewed at some point this year by a policy committee. I don't think there's any sense of urgency on a broader review of this policy because this was written relatively quickly, in the fall when we established F&O and established the community volunteers. So I think this is a solution for a problem we have right this moment. and then this policy could get.
Yeah, and I've already talked with Janice about bringing it up back to policy at some point.
So that's the proposal, and I would ask for a motion. Well, you would ask for a motion.
Can I get a motion, please? Wait for discussion, Susan.
Yeah,
Can we get a motion?
I move approval of the amended policy number 0155, committees as presented.
And I'll second it.
Further discussion, Susan.
I think this is a great idea, particularly the way the committee started, and particularly as the new chair, if you're comfortable with that, and you've been on the committee. I know there were a significant number of applicants who are still very interested in that committee, but again, you've just gotten it started. I think also, plus, even as a member of policy, I would support you as a group needing to come forward and do this in this timely piece. I do think eventually it will be helpful to have this discussed generally, because we have other community members on other committees who may, for one reason or another, want to have language that allows this. But truthfully, this language is a little awkward. So again, I think it'll be nice. I mean, with the option for the community member to continue serving. So if you stop at that point, even though it does say, and with the approval of the chairperson, let's say the chair, for any reason, has a relationship with these people, but the rest of the committee doesn't really want to do this. Again, it's just cleaning up the language a little bit. I think for right now, this works great and we should proceed. But I think it would be helpful for us to have a conversation from a policy point of view in the making it sound like it's the committee member's choice rather than the chair's choice.
Well, it was the chair's choice to have him on the committee in the first place. And also, the
But
language
that
would
was
get stricken after this, because we only need this once, right?
Yeah.
So this language would get stricken anyway, going forward.
Again, I totally support doing this right now. I'm just saying, we do need to look, if we were going to try and think about implementing this process for the other committees as well, I think we'd need to clean up.
Yeah, so what I have asked Janice to do, because Philip put this recommendation in running per policy, and what I'd asked Janice to do is take this back to policy committee so you can take a look, because at the end of the day, we shouldn't have a policy that references like something so specific around a school year anyway. So the whole thing needs to we need to look at that, and then we need to consider how we're doing terms. I think we need to be more articulate in kind of processes, all those things, because to Philip's point, it was like we wanted folks, and this was the fastest way to do it. So it'll come back to policy for cleaning up.
I totally agree. And again, because Philip is the chair and he's comfortable with the way this is written, I'm absolutely fine with that. But I have had at least one comment back saying, it looks like it's the committee member's choice. I said, no, not exactly. So just check in on cleanup later.
Yeah.
Make sure it does exactly what the chair wants it to do. And it is a different committee chair than we had before. So now they have the ability to make the choice.
Yeah, go ahead, Michelle.
I just want to say I appreciate this, because the fact that we only had 6 months with our committees, and there's a big learning curve just on the onset, even kind of knowing what you need to know in order then to be a pretty valued opinion or a voice in the on the committee. So I'm really pleased that this is up for vote, and I think it might be helpful.
Yeah, and I think when we go to, as a policy committee, to look at this, I think it will be really helpful to get feedback from the chairs of both committees that have community members on them, so that we can write some language that will make sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It does exactly what you as chairs wanted to do without any ability to misread your directive, your guidance.
Discussion. All right, voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. Last on our action items for today, our policy update second reading.
Yes, so a very robust group of policies we brought forward April 14th. I haven't had any questions from anybody on the board about any of them, but I would turn it over for that now if anybody has any questions between the first and second read.
Any questions at all? Great, can I get a motion, please? Oh, sorry, this is just, oh no, this is action.
I can read, yeah.
We don't
it's-
have a.
So can I get a motion to approve all the policies presented in second reading? Yeah, as presented.
So moved.
Seconded.
Voice vote, any further discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries.
I'd like to really thank Tanya for all the work that she did on this and the way she presented this to us and the way that we could go through it. We have been doing the Neola policies for quite a few years now. And this particular section, with the work that the superintendent did, really enhanced our ability to move forward on this.
All right, informational items, enrollment update.
Yes, so as we continue to look at our class size policy and then think about our enrollment in the classrooms from a K-8 perspective, as promised, we have the enrollment snapshot for May. And so what you see attached is our current enrollment state. This was the snapshot taken on May 8th. And just as a reminder, this polls every day at 4 a.m. from Infinite Campus and updates our grid. We have it scheduled so that if anything goes over the class size range, it pops in red. So you'll see we're happy to note that 4K at Taylor Prairie is there. If you remember when we made the staffing plan, we thought that might be there, and the 4K teacher there is willing to work full-time, so we have an option there. We're waiting to see, now that open enrollment slots have been
Doled out and accepted?
Yeah, doled out. Now we're waiting on accepting. Then we can see, if people accept them and where that lands. So we're in that funky spot right now where.
Is the Winnequa 4K red, is that
Yep,
new
yep,
from
that's
last time?
brand new.
Okay,
That's brand new too, so it's exciting.
Wow,
I think what's interesting, our 4Ks are a little hot and our regular kindergarten is not. So it's an interesting trend. I think we've seen many people come for 4K and then not come back. And sometimes it's open enrollment, and I think that's lots of different reasons. When families make those decisions for open enrollment, we have nice wrap care. We've got some options that not all districts have. So that's one of the things we're looking into. So watching those, and then as we get open enrollment, people accepting their seats, then we'll be able to move forward. So we feel like we have some good solutions in our back pockets for these two areas.
Great. Any questions? Yeah, Eric.
Question is about Winnequa fourth grade. We're at 25.5, correct? So am I correct if we get one more student enrolled that would push us to a new 5 sections instead of 4?
25.5.
Our actual for class size. Am I right on that?
6 is the max.
Correct. So if we go to 101,
Yeah,
then that pushes us over that threshold.
I don't know if one more would do it, but yes, if it goes red, then that's when we have the conversation about how do we want to move forward. Now, one of the,
Might be 2 more, but yeah.
one or two.
It's
Real
close. It's close.
Yes,
Yeah,
it is
so,
close.
so my question is,
Yep.
whatever that number is, 1 or 2, which pushes us over our own recommendation of
Yep.
26.
Yep.
Does that mean we add a section?
Yeah, so our board policy says that you need to be notified, which is, why we're bringing this here. And then that we have recommendations of different things that we can do. Adding another section is one of those things. We haven't built any contingencies into the budget for additional teacher FTE. I think one of the things we're looking at is if you look at some of these grades, some of these sections, you could probably go down a section and move a teacher. And so that's kind of where we're at right now. Not in Winnequa, but just if you look at the totality.
Right, so my question going back to Winnequa. Let's hypothetically, we have 2 more students enroll. pushes us over our recommended limit for a district of 26, our options are A, add a section, which you're saying is probably not possible because it's not in the budget. What's
We'll
our,
have to look at what we could do.
so what's our B option then?
Yeah, I think the other thing is in fourth grade, we do not have educational assistants that serve with the teachers, much like we do in 4K, 5K. Thinking about that. Also, we have quite a few open enrollment students, like what are where are their options for that? I think we would just have to dig through and bring forward like what we think is the best decision.
Okay, I guess
We still don't have, what this time of year, what we don't have is we don't have confirmation that all these kids are actually coming.
I understand
Right?
that.
So
I
it's
know, and that's why I'm asking a hypothetical of,
Right, yeah.
and here's why I'm asking it. Not only community members, but also teachers.
Have been concerned.
Right, have been concerned. I've had a number of conversations with them. And, and my conversations with them, we don't know the exact number yet. So, it's hard to even get in this conversation until we get that number. But then some questions were raised, well, what if we go above 26? What happens then? Does that mean we get a new section? And I think the understanding is that if we're following our own guidelines, that we do get a new section. And I'm hearing now that that's probably not the case.
Well, the policy talks about if it goes over different options that can be considered. It
Sure.
doesn't say like automatic add a section.
I don't think that's the understanding of the teachers in our district.
Well, because we've never really talked about.
Well, that's why I'm asking.
Yeah, I mean, it's been in the last couple board updates. We talked about what are those options. I think we also sent it out in the last parent update and to staff about what happens if a class goes over that recommendation. We've talked about this. There's only so many resources. So if we put one there, we take it from somewhere else. Totally fine. We just want to have the best picture possible that we're doing that.
I understand that we've talked about it, and I understand what you're saying. I believe that there is a belief from a large amount of staff in the community that if we hit that, we'll go over that 26 number, that there is going to be another section added. And I think maybe
Reiterate that again.
I would
What
not
those-
only suggest reiterating it, but explaining the other options of what happens so that we're not kind of caught if that does happen, then all of a sudden, like, wait a second, we thought we were going to get another section. Now we're not getting another section.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I also think explaining too that, even if there was another section doesn't necessarily mean new staff. It could be a redistribution of staff. Correct. Which I think is a nuance there that it would probably be new folks based on how we operate. Yeah, Susan.
I would reaffirm Eric's questions and kind of his approach, because historically, we have added another section. And there was a point where we didn't even have room in the building for the additional section. So we actually put a section in the library. These kids were actually taught the entire year in the library. That was their classroom. And their section was 17 kids. Our choice was 30. And we passed these quite a few years ago. I wasn't on the board. I was on what we called our PTO at that time. And there was huge board and community support for these guidelines. And they've been a policy that's been difficult to adhere to. Ask Jared about trying to do this, particularly in relation to the open enrollment. Historically, we had a board that accepted almost every single open enrollment application. And that was another major reason for passing these guidelines. So trying to meet the needs of the kids that we're required to meet the needs of. So I think I would support to continue to take these guidelines very seriously as we move forward.
Yeah, I was going to ask, do we have any sense for, so we're at a point right now, I think what I just heard is we're at a point right now where we don't really know for sure right, where the numbers are going to fall. Do we have a sense, though, for generally when that crystallizes? You know, is it June, is it July, or is it all over the place depending on the year and the district, or? Yeah, like when do we start thinking these numbers are more solid?
I also want to think about the hiring season, right? So we have to, you get much past mid-June, and you're in a strict hiring season, because usually most people that want to find a different job have done that, so that's where we sit. Online registration doesn't open until July 1st, and so that's part of the issue too, is sometimes families know they're leaving and haven't told anybody, or families maybe are looking at open enrollment in lots of different places and they're not sure where they're going to land. So the coming and going isn't as clean as I think it used to be, because kids move all during the year and things like that now. So. Yeah, Eric.
I would just add to not underestimate the impact that this has and the concern that I'm bringing to you, Tanya, because we just increased class sizes within our guidelines. Nonetheless, they were increased for a majority of grades. And I think that this could potentially become an issue if we're not very clear about how we're, and again, we don't know. It might stay the same. I just want to be prepared, I think it's going to increase. I think we're going to have a couple families move in. That's usually the case. And
A lot of homes for sale in Monona right now. Homes are popping
there are a
up.
number of homes for sale. They sell pretty fast. One just sold. So, it's,
If we could get like 20 for fourth grade, that'd be great.
well, I don't think we're going to get 20, but I think, I hope we get 20, but I think we're going to get a few. And I just don't want to be in a situation where we're not keeping to our guidelines and not clear about I thought we were going to move to another section. Why haven't we moved to another section when that's what we've been really clear about this whole time, about adding, increasing our class sizes within our guidelines, and then it falls outside of that, and all of a sudden we're not adding them, so.
Yeah, and I think one of the tricks that we really have to keep leaning into is what our policies say, and people understand the policy from top to bottom. And while the policy says we have these guidelines and we have these ranges, it also says straight up in there, like, it doesn't mean it's an automatic another section. It's what's the process of things you look at and making some of those decisions. And so, that lives right in there, can continue to reiterate it. I know we've had these conversations at Winnequa. I think, we should still have to continue to work through them.
Yeah, I think the policy actually says that if a class exceeds the high range, it has to be fixed within 2 years. And so there's a fair amount of grace in the policy on like what the plan looks like to resolve it.
Also, because classes move every year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think that, to me, like what Eric's pointing out, and I think it's fair, right? That there's like expectations and there's reality, right? And there's some gap, I think, in terms of what that is, particularly as it relates to how we functioned previously at elementary. And then, we had this lengthy conversation last meeting, right, around courses at secondary as well. So I think you can't over communicate enough, and you can't continuously plan enough when you have a gap between expectations and reality.
Yeah, and I still continue to think, we looked at what our benchmark comparisons look like for class sizes, like we're right in that range. We haven't been coming anywhere near them, so that is a shift. But I'll back you up to your earlier vote on compensation.
Right.
Like,
yeah,
a lot of, like, we had to make some really hard decisions and think about how do we put that money on the pay scale. And obviously there was some concessions around insurance. We know some money came from there too. So it didn't come from nowhere, right?
Yeah.
It's so much in the pot. So.
Yeah, no, I don't know that I'm hearing in general like concerns about us applying the class size policy as much as let's make sure we're really clear with folks about what it is and what it is not.
Well, I would say I have concerns about it.
Okay, that's fair.
I have some concerns about it because we just asked the reality is class sizes have increased within our guidelines, but they still increase. The teachers have increased class sizes, and potentially we'll have class sizes that go beyond our recommendation. But like you said, Philip, we have this other language in there that basically says we don't have to do what we should probably do anyways. So,
One other comment I think that might be helpful along the same lines of what we've been talking about with trying to just align expectations and what the plans are and things. I think this particular fourth grade Winnequa, issue that we've received so much feedback on, it's not purely numbers, right, that we're hearing. We're hearing a lot of very specific comments about this specific cohort, right? And so I think anything we can do to talk more specifically about how we would address, the size of the sections with this cohort would be helpful. Beyond just how we would, deal with the section size in general. Just because that's, I think, what a lot of the concern is built around.
Yeah, and I have gotten feedback from some of the families that have some of those kids that have some of the big concerns, and this conversation and the discussions around these kids has been incredibly hurtful for them.
Yeah.
And really, really difficult because they're not feeling remotely wanted.
Yeah.
And there's been some pushback about that, we've now tagged a group of kids.
Right,
as
now there's a
this
narrative.
the narrative is what a kid looks like in second grade is not what they look like coming into fourth grade.
that's why I'm trying to keep it on the numbers.
Exactly.
Oh, absolutely, right. But I think.
I know.
Yeah.
No,
yeah.
You live in the neighborhood.
Yeah. Yep. Susan?
Well, and I think another thing that's a little bit of a struggle here is that in the past, again, looking at what we've done historically and what our community is used to having us do historically is, again, when you get over and you don't really know what's going to happen until school actually starts, so often we don't make a final decision on that until later. But we also, in the past, have used the class size goal. And that helped us anticipate maybe needing to make movement. One, looking to see if there's room in the school. Two, what are the staffing needs going to be? How are we going to do this? And if we do it, when are we going to make this decision? Rather than kind of say, well, we're going to mark it in red. Historically, what we've done is added the other section.
But what I do want to, and then we can, I think, wrap up this conversation too. I want to name that the expectation of the board, right, is that administration is working within our policy. And so if what we're talking about is a problem with our policy, right, then it's our role to change that policy. I think it's not reasonable for us to ask Tanya or Kristen or any administrator to interpret policy different than how it's written in front of them. Like, I just don't think that's fair or reasonable. So if we wanted to, right, we could revisit the policy and make crisper language, different language, all of those things. But I want to caution us around giving directives around operations when that operation is functioning within the curtilage of our policy, which is what's happening right now.
Governance is a policy.
Correct.
And in the past, the processes that were utilized within this policy that the board at that time supported were this. And I think it's important to understand that why did we follow this process was because that's how that board governed this policy.
I disagree with that interpretation. I think that the policy is what it is, and I think we had administrators that were reading and engaging with the policy in an operations way, in a really specific way. We have a new set of administrators, and with a new set of administrators comes with a new set of operating parameters. And so I hear you, I don't agree. And like I said, I just want us to be really mindful of, if what we're complaining about is the policy, then it's our job to look at the policy and fix it. If what we're complaining about is how that policy is being implemented or interpreted, then that's something that we can talk about as part of like ongoing evaluation of superintendent. But those two things, I think, right now are getting conflated in terms of the interpretation and reading and the doing. Yeah, Janice.
Yeah, and I'm just going to say, like, the policy is the policy, and really, like, it should be clear enough that it doesn't matter who's sitting over there, that it's implemented the same way. And so we may need to look at it and decide, like, is it clear? My goal would be that we find the right level of support for all the kids at Winnequa, but especially the fourth graders whom we seem to have gotten a whole lot of comments about. So however, whatever that looks like once it all shakes out, you know what I mean? Because we still don't know where it is.
Yeah, go ahead, Risha.
About with the paras and teaching help that we have of non-certified staff that come and help. I'm assuming the principals sit down and kind of make a plan as to where they want to best utilize them, or are some classes kind of already tagged with them?
5K is where we typically assign them.
Okay.
Upper elementary, no, doesn't usually. They may have some extra support that swings in, but they typically do not have an EA in the classroom.
Okay, thank you.
They could have an SEA.
Yeah.
Okay.
Around a student with a disability,
Yep.
and they're there for a very specific reason.
Yep.
But at the upper elementary, they don't have EAs that just attend, with them to serve the kids.
But it would reduce the staff to student ratio if you had multiple adults in there.
And I think it used to be a little different. When I used to substitute teach at Winnequa, it was configured a little differently. So that's why it's good to kind of know where everything's at now versus in the past.
Anything else around enrollment? I mean, this is part of why I'm really glad that we have this as a standalone informational item every meeting, so that we can have these discussions, figure out what parts of policy we need to look at, figure out what questions we have around operations of it, and then continue to communicate that out as consistently and clearly as possible. So thank you for the conversation, everybody. Other informational items, F&O. I know we did a lot of F&O related presentation today. Philip, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, I don't think there's anything interesting to add aside from we've established fourth Thursday of the month for our standing committee meeting moving forward. I'm sure there'll be occasions where we have to add an extra one or move one, but that's our hope is to consistently meet on the fourth Thursday of the month.
Similarly with personnel, we did the business of personnel. Also are looking at a consistent time. We'll see how that goes. Susan, Monona Grove Education Foundation.
The Monona Grove Education Foundation met at 4:00 today until 5:30. Thanks a lot.
Fresh.
Basically, their new business was three things. They talked about the endowment amounts for each school. So for people who might be new on the board and might not understand, effectively, there was a point where a group helped solicit an endowment for each school of a minimum of $10,000. And some of the schools actually got a little more than that. Some were way behind in having that happen. But effectively, that's what they've established. And so there's a certain amount from the interest of that amount of money every year that are called endowment amounts for each school. It usually averages between $600 and $800 a year. And what's happened in the past is the principals or the schools don't know they have this money available, so it just kind of sits there. It's one thing if you choose to have it sit there. It's another thing if you don't really know it's there and you can spend it. So one of the things they've talked about is making sure they notify each of the schools the amount. And again, so they put that out in front of the board today with the amounts. And again, it's between 600, 800, depending upon what the actual endowment is. Then they also had a motion to approve grants, which were awarded in March and April. And they had 6 grants, a grab and go refill, which is basically snapback kinds of things. Basically an art fair, leadership conference, summer school snacks, teacher appreciation. So MGF basically gave an amount to the district of $1,000 for teacher appreciation. And then they also bought an asthma machine, which is I thought was also very interesting. So those were the 6 grants they approved today. They are, they also gave an update on the scholarships awards that they're going to be making at the recognition evenings. They have 30 scholarships totaling almost $30,000. So again, and a lot of these were individual family donation scholarships. So when they give that scholarship out, they always give the name of the scholarship. Depending upon who presents it, you often get a little bit of history of, this is from this family. So for instance, in the past, we've had a scholarship called the Glenn McNaughton Scholarship. He was one of the math teachers for many, many years here in the school district, educated lots of the students. That's just an example of what it may be. It may be a family, Patty McGinnis, who was a teacher here, a 6th grade teacher for years, and then was actually a principal. So if you would, I would encourage board members to attend those recognition evenings so you can see the awards if you were at the orchestra, as Lena talked about, the orchestra, choir, and band events, and the things that they were giving out. It's amazing to have almost every single person having received a state or some type of award. So again, these scholarships are absolutely amazing. They are still working on printing the scholarship information and getting all that out. Their next regular meeting is going to be June 10th, but they will be presenting at the recognition evenings. I mean, they did a great job today.
All right, moving on to the superintendent's report.
Yeah, just wanted to note that obviously, as we've, been a community impacted by a lot of loss in Cottage Grove, just reminding families that if they're looking for resources for themselves or anyone else, we do have school-based mental health providers and our social workers, counselors, and school psychologists that can help make referrals, give information. I know it's hard to find people sometimes that can take those referrals, but, we just want to continue to be there and offer supports to families as we can and continue to work with, school staff to work through those things. So just want to name that. We're also looking forward to graduation, obviously June 1st at 10 o'clock for the high school, and MG 21, I think, is June 5th at 7. And then we have gotten some questions about when buy a bus seat will begin. Just wanted to let families know that the buy a bus seat fees were approved last time, and then that information will come out any day now.
Great.
Monday. Katie's whispering Monday. So we've had families reach out, and I'm very grateful that the program will continue and that they have an opportunity to use that service.
Yeah, I've also heard from several families that are happy about it. So thank you for making that work. Yes, Susan.
I just have the quick question, and again, Tony can just have Tish send that information out, but for board members that are going to be at the high school graduation.
I don't have that information yet, and when I get it, I will get it.
Okay, what time do you want us and where do we go? I remember last year we were, and then when we came back out, we all came out different doors, so we weren't sure.
She's on it.
And then, do we know, are we going to be giving out to?
When I have
We don't have
I'll
anything.
share it with you. I'm assuming it'll be as in previous years where you give out.
Okay,
I'm
okay.
assuming.
And again, I
I
would
don't know
just,
if you're coming.
I would just caution people, the one thing about that center, the seats are great, but the parking's terrible. So go early or have somebody drop you off.
It's better than the high school parking.
It's true.
Yeah.
But I mean, bar's low on that one, so. All right. Anything else, Tanya? Nope. Great. Thank you so much. Next up are future meeting dates, which are in there. As a reminder, our next Board of Ed meeting in June will be at Cottage Grove in the Village Hall. So this is exciting. And then we'll let you know if there'll be a closed session that day. Otherwise, plan on starting at 7. Sound good? All right. I would entertain a motion to adjourn, please.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Ayes have it. Meeting is adjourned at 9:04. Thank you, everybody.
Were you gonna put a little note together for F&O